I first started out as an audiobook narrator, I was trying to work so quickly and get everything done as quickly as possible because I was stressed out about deadlines. I had a lot of other things on my plate, and I just wanted to make sure that I was finishing everything on time and that I could just get each section over with. But later on, after I had a little bit more experience, I realized that all of those things that I tried to do to make me quicker were actually setting me back. I was not being efficient at all, and I was kind of putting together messy work that I had to sort through later to try to perfect and clean up, and that would set me back hours of valuable time while I was trying to meet those deadlines and while I was trying to keep up with all of my other commitments. So today I'm going to show you guys all of those quick mistakes that I would make that would make me so much less efficient, so you guys can learn how to actually be efficient in your narration, since I know a lot of people are not narrating full-time. We don't all have that opportunity. So I want to show you guys how to actually become an audiobook narrator even when you have a lot of other things going on, just by being more efficient. So let's get into it. If you're new here, my name is Elsa, and I'm here to help you guys with all of your narration questions and concerns. If you have any questions, check out some of my other videos. If you have a new question, definitely leave a comment and I will get back to you on those. Okay, so before I get into it, I just didn't know if you guys wanted to see my little baby puppy is joining us today. He's actually been around in a lot of my videos. I just haven't showed him. Anyway, let's get into it. First things first, I want to talk a little bit about some additional equipment that I use for my narration. If you've seen my equipment setup video, I talk about my microphone, my pop filter, all of that. But today I want to show you guys a couple more things that I use that makes the process even more efficient. So the first thing I like to use is a stand for my laptop. You'll notice my laptop is a little bit elevated. I can link the stand in the description as well. There's not really anything special about it. I just really appreciate that it lifts my computer up a little bit, because when I narrate, I just have my microphone sitting like right here and it's pretty tall. So it would tend to block my vision when I'm narrating, and that would make it really hard to keep my spot and to follow along and see where I am on the manuscript. So just having the computer raised a little bit makes it so much easier. It also puts it more at eye level so that I'm not like craning my neck. And having a more comfortable posture helps you narrate for a longer period of time, and it just kind of keeps you going so that you don't need to take quite as many breaks, maybe. The next thing that I want to show you guys is my blue light glasses. These are just some basic ones that I got off Amazon. I think they're like $12, but these are really helpful because when you're narrating, give me one second. When you're narrating off of a bright white screen, for me at least, my eyes would get so tired and like dry. It would just make me feel really tired overall because my eyes were just so like burnt. Like I just wanted to close my eyes and sleep. And that is not really a productive way to go about narrating a long section of text. You know, you might not have a lot of time to take like 1,000 breaks. So yeah, I definitely recommend getting some glasses to make that bright white a little bit more comfortable on your eyes. It also protects you looking at a computer for like a long period of time anyway. Also, as a contacts user, sometimes when I'm staring at my screen, my contacts get a little bit dried out, and sometimes like they would kind of get in the wrong position, and then I would have to like wait till my contacts get in the right spot, maybe go pop some saline in or something. Like, took a while and it was really frustrating. So having some basic blue light glasses really helps just keep you going for a longer period of time. So these are just some super easy pieces of equipment that can just make the process a little bit easier. Neither of them were very expensive, so if you are ready to just upgrade your setup a little bit, that's what I would recommend. The other things you want to have might sound a little bit obvious, but they definitely help out. You're going to want to have some water on hand so that, you know, you're talking a lot. Definitely helps to just keep a little bit of water to take a sip whenever you need. The other thing I really appreciate having around is just some chapstick. Then, you know, your lips get dry and you want your audio to always sound consistent. So if you do one section where you have chapstick on and the next section, like your lips are kind of dry, you can possibly pick up some differences in those sections. So always keeping your lips moisturized so that you can just talk more freely. Always something I recommend. I'm actually gonna have to put some on right now because these winters, man. So the next thing that you're going to want to do is open up GarageBand and flip on all of those settings and presets that I walked you guys through in my GarageBand setting video. I'll have that up here someplace, but I'm gonna go do that real quick. So I already have my file open on GarageBand. Now I'm going to turn on all of those presets. Definitely check out that video to see the special trick I showed you to save all of your settings so that you can open up your GarageBand file very, very quickly. I'm gonna turn on all of my settings on here right now, and I promise you guys, this takes less than a minute, might even be like less than 45 seconds. I'm gonna turn all of those on right now. Let's go. All right, voila. I have just turned on all of my plugins and settings, and they're already at the perfect point that is gonna make my audio sound as vibrant and clear as possible. So now I like to turn on my GarageBand settings before I even start recording the audio. That way, when I finish my audio, the settings are already perfect and I don't need to think about that stuff anymore. Having it set up right before you record makes it so much easier, and then I know the audio sounds good before I even get into it. I also realized I did not talk about the equipment setup at all. I can't really do that since I'm using my microphone for the video, but check out my equipment setup video if you are still wondering about how to get all of your equipment hooked together and ready to go. The next thing you're going to want to do after you get GarageBand all ready is you're going to go into the manuscript of your book and start reading. So this is a section from the last book I narrated. It's called Sustainable Fashion DIY. It will be up on Audible very shortly, I hope. But before you can actually start recording your audio, you're going to want to read through the section. This is a very important part that I would tend to skip earlier on because I just wanted to start. I want to get started. I didn't want to mess around with like, yeah, I know what it says. I'm sure I can get it. Like, no, read through the section first before you start. Now, when you start going through the audio, you're going to check for two things. The first one being unfamiliar words. If you come across a word that you don't really know or don't say very often, you're going to want to practice, sound it out, make sure you're confident. If it's a word that you're really unfamiliar with, or maybe in like a different language or something, I like to go into Google Translate and then type the word in and then hit play so it can just get sounded out. That way, when I come across that section in my actual recording, I don't like freeze up, whoa, don't know that word. And then I have to kind of go through that process during the recording. It's really stressful and it sets you back a lot of time. So when you're just practice reading, then you aren't going to feel that uncomfortable about not knowing the word, having to check it, all that stuff. It happens, and it's much better to do that before you actually press record to save you time with editing as well. The other thing that you want to look for when you are practice reading is how long the sentences are. It is really common for authors to want to write a very long sentence to make their writing seem a lot more professional or smart or that kind of thing, and that's totally okay. But as a narrator, that could be kind of an inconvenience. So you're gonna check for how long the sentences are, see what kind of punctuation is in there. That way you can kind of plan out your breathing or know like when you need to take out a longer breath. And then that will prevent you from doing the sentence wrong the first couple of times. Like if you think a sentence is only like one line, so you kind of put like emphasis on certain words in there using the assumption that it is only that long. But then you keep reading and then you realize, oh, this is actually like keep going, like it's still going. So then you kind of need to like take a step back and realize this is a chunk of text here. I need to make sure I'm putting the emphasis in all of the right places. So that is super easy to do when you are just practice reading, but once you get into the recording, it will set you back a lot of time because you're like worried. Now you get stressed. The common denominator in here is that you can get stressed out and tend to put a lot of pressure on yourself. that makes the recording worse. That makes you make more mistakes. You need to just be natural throughout the recording and make sure that you are prepared for those mistakes before they happen, okay? The other thing about pre-reading is you need to actually read out loud and narrate it just as you're going to do the recording. You can't just skim it in your head. You actually want to be sounding everything out so that you are really certain that you know how everything is going to go when it gets to recording. And think of it this way, like if you have done theater or acting or are familiar with it at all, you know that people need to rehearse. Like you need to practice. You can't just start recording and think everything is going to be perfect. That is impossible. And the thing with narrating is you can just read a section, especially if you're doing nonfiction. I've never done a book that is actually fiction. If you did a fiction book, you might want to actually read the entire book beforehand. But if you're doing nonfiction, you can just read a section, record it, move on to the next section, pre-read, record, you're good to go. But it's not even as much work as like an actual movie or something where you are reading the entire thing 1,000 times before you even start recording. This is actually giving you a lot more freedom to just pre-read it once or twice or a couple of times, and then you're all ready. So now we are actually going to get into the recording process. You're going to go into GarageBand, hit record, and then you can start reading. So now you should be feeling pretty confident. You know all of the words, all of the breaths you might need to take, all of the sentences, and you're familiar with how the story is going to go. So now you're just going to record naturally, just as you were doing with your pre-read. And now you're going to give yourself a bunch of room to make those mistakes. If you make a mistake, you are not going to go into GarageBand, stop the recording, delete it, and carry on. That will set you back so much time, and it also puts pressure on yourself. If you go into it saying like, okay, this one is going to be good, and then you start recording, and then you're like, no, I messed up that word again, and then you have to go back, and then you keep trying to say this is going to be the good one, that's never going to work, and you're going to keep getting frustrated, and that's going to come through in your voice. So just take a step back, say, I got this, I know what I'm doing, and then you're going to go through it. If you make any mistakes, which you definitely will, like this is not trying to say like pre-read so you don't make mistakes, like you can make mistakes and that is completely okay, that is normal, it happens. So when those things come up, you're just going to take a break, take a breath, take a pause, and then keep going, okay? Do not be upset. I know it can be frustrating. Sometimes you have an off day or towards the end of your like narration time, you're starting to feel like you make mistakes every sentence, or you started a sentence like 5 times and you still can't get it quite right. And those things are certainly frustrating, but you'll start to realize that after you pre-read and practice and start to get more confident behind the microphone and all of that, you won't see those things happening quite so much. So if you stay with it, you'll be okay. But just remember, when you make a mistake, just keep going and you'll be okay. After you have recorded the entire thing, then you're going back into editing. But keep in mind, all of your settings are already perfect because you worked on those before you started recording. So now all that's left to do is take out any mistakes or breaths that you may have had. So you do this by listening through the audio. When you get to a gap, you're going to double click on the blue audio, say split at pinhead, and then drag the audio back where you want it to go. I talk about all of this more in detail in my GarageBand settings video, so make sure to check that out if you are still having some questions about these things. But yeah, just take out any of those mistakes. And now, after you have listened to the audio through one time and took out as many mistakes as you could find, and you're feeling pretty confident about your audio, before you submit it, you're going to listen through it one more time. This was another thing that I never wanted to do at the beginning when I first started out, because I was like, okay, good, we're done, we did that, let's keep going. I was a really stressed little girl, okay? Like I was in school, I was busy, and I was tired, so I just want to get these things done. And that would actually set me back because then I was finding mistakes later, or I would get the author telling me about these mistakes that they could find in the audio. And that's kind of embarrassing. Like you don't really want your boss telling you like to fix all these things. Like do it right the first time and then you can just keep moving. So what I like to do is actually take a step back. The last time I listened through the audio, And I want to come at it from a listener's perspective, not as a narrator, okay? As a narrator, you're looking at your audio, you're looking at your manuscript, and you're making sure everything looks and sounds just right. But your listeners are not going to be listening for that stuff. Usually, an audiobook narrator is going to be multitasking. They're not sitting here, eyes closed, listening to the entire audiobook. They're going to be driving, they're going to be getting ready, going for a walk, whatever. And they aren't really going to try to be picking up any mistakes. They just want to listen to a good book. So, this is where I let myself get a little bit distracted. Don't go overboard. Like, I'm not watching TikTok or anything, but your mind can kind of wander. It might like fidget with a Rubik's Cube, like that kind of thing. Like, just let yourself listen through the audio as a listener and don't hyperfixate on all of those mistakes. Once you get to that point and you're kind of listening through, you make sure you catch any mistakes that might occur. That's still important. I'm not saying to just think like, I hope the listener isn't going to catch that. Like, they could still catch mistakes, and you want to make sure you take those mistakes out before it gets to that point. But as you're listening, you're looking for mistakes that might come up for someone who is not even paying 100% of their attention to it. And then you are ready to go with the audio once you actually submit it. That's such a huge thing in this whole process. You need to feel confident about your audio before and after you record it so that you aren't still worrying about things afterwards. Like, when I submit an MP3, I am banking on never listening to that thing again. Okay, like, I do not want to listen to my own voice one more time for that section. Like, if someone tries to play me a piece of my audiobook, like, no, do not want to hear it. I know I did a good job. Do not let me catch any stupid little mistakes. Like, I am done, and I do not want to listen to myself talking about that anymore. Stresses me out. So you want to be confident that you are completely done. And then once you submit the final audiobook, you are feeling good about it. You are not going to be thinking, okay, I know I made a little mistake in chapter 3. I'm really hoping nobody catches it. No, fix that mistake in chapter 3. My point here is to say that mistakes happen. You are prepared to make mistakes, but you're also prepared to fix them and to be proactive before these things start. That is what makes this process so much more efficient and also so much more fun. If you take pressure off of yourself and to let this be just a time where you can just sit and play around with audio if you enjoy it, or to be able to practice your acting skills, that is so much fun, okay? And by taking pressure off, you are avoiding mistakes, and that will make your audio production process so much more efficient, okay? So that is the whole point of this, guys. Keep it efficient and keep it high quality. And these things, like, you keep learning about it the more you practice and the more audiobooks you do. I can say that each audiobook that I do, I have learned something that I can take with me into the next audiobook, and that is so helpful. But I am just trying to show you guys that you can do it too. You guys can do this. I want to share these tips with you guys so that you feel more confident going into it, and you don't need to make the mistakes that I did and that could have set me back a little bit of time. So if you guys found this video helpful, make sure you check out either of these that will help you learn more about the audiobook process and my personal opinions and techniques as a narrator. Thank you guys so much for being here. Love you all. Have a beautiful day.